A new book means a new update cycle, and we have plenty going on in Update 7.0. Today we'll be covering the new refines for Kronya, Hubert, Na, Duo Ephraim and Lyon, and Winter Duo Marth and Elice. Double duo refines for this month. We'll take a look at all the new effects, plus discuss some build ideas and general playstyles. For those of you worried about no arena medals for refining, the Book 7 quests offer a whopping 7,000 arena medals to earn. That's going to make a lot of people very happy, although there are some other incentives to do your weekly arena runs now. For our first refine, we have Kronya, a colorless infantry drag unit, and a heroic rail unit. Kronya has pretty high speed and unusually high HP, but she has a big focus on attack. With only 31 base, I highly suggest an attack boon and will need all the extra damage you can get. For her dagger, Athame, whatever it's called, it only received one change. It grants plus 3 res, and now if Kronya initiates or the foe has less than full health, she gets plus 5 attack and speed during combat. The refine technically says less than or equal to 99% HP, but for practicality, this is basically less than 100%. Technically, it's a worse condition, but we ain't diving into decimal percentages in Fae. Anyway, the other part of this weapon is that Kronya gets advantage if the foe has lost any HP. She also retains the attack and speed boost. Only difference here is that she gets plus 5 attack and speed for player phase. For the refined portion, if unit initiates combat or is not adjacent to an ally, grant plus 5 attack and speed during combat. After combat, if Kronya initiated and attacked, she does 5 damage out of combat to targeted foes within 2 spaces, plus she inflicts exposure on those same foes. Okay, so altogether, Kronya gets plus 10 attack and speed during combat. However, that is literally all she gets. It only after her initial fight do these other effects take place. She now has built-in Savage Blow 2, and Exposure is a status which grants another 10 damage on hit. The Savage Blow effect triggers the Vantage effect, and you don't have to run the actual skill itself now. Kronya will get another 15 effective damage for Vantage sweeps, and if you include the dagger debuffs, that's another minus 7 defense too. Basically, this refine just makes her better at what she already did. There are some issues with it though, and we'll get to those soon. We recently had a taste of some good old Vantage cheese with Ninja Camilla. Kronya can set up the same way, with Close Salvo for extra attack, but she doesn't get brave hits. However, with the upcoming banner, Special Spiral 4 is in the game and can fit Kronya. It grants plus 5 damage on special trigger and negates non-special damage reduction, plus you're going to get the minus 2 cooldown after combat to recharge. Essentially, Kronya can get Lethality's damage reduction piercing without needing to use the 4 cooldown special itself. She can run Ruptured Sky, Moonbow, or Glimmer and still get rid of DR. Plus, Special Spiral recharges the special for continuous Vantage procs. Getting the first special going is an issue, but part of it is that Kronya has 0 defensive health. If you run things like Wind or Water Sweep, no more Special Spiral, and you need all the attack you can get from every other slot. No follow-up could be helpful, but you're going to lose damage, and if it's not that useful for Vantage one-shotting anyway. Speed Smoke 4 could give Kronya dodge damage reduction, but that's only after she survived one fight beforehand. It might help if Vantage fails to one-shot a target, but if the first round goes poorly, then it's a mess already. If damage consistency worries you, then perhaps Kronya could try to shift gears. Maybe you can try to set up exposure support for your team. For example, use Wind or Water Sweep and double Savage Blow. Poison Strike can work too if you want. The goal is to just trip away as much HP on the enemy team. This could set up a Brave unit to double dip off exposure for 20 bonus damage, not to mention the out of combat damage and dagger debuffs. Remember, exposure helps everyone on your team. Another playstyle option is to just go full range Vantage fighting, similar to a speed preempt user. You can run Special Spiral 4 with Finish 4A skills for a lot of extra damage. Overall, it's not a bad refine, but Kronya still lacks some important aspects. Unlike Ninja Camilla, she cannot Vantage full HP foes, which can complicate things. One-shot damage output is also a concern. There are some benefits though. Exposure is still pretty rare, and it's on a free-to-play and stress-free dagger unit who inflicts defense debuffs with Savage Blow 2. Empowering teammates could be a better strategy here. If you can combo with Dominance, that would also be pretty strong. Our next refine goes to Hubert, a high-attack red infantry mage who probably does not need that new arcane red tome. Just in time, Hubert's new weapon is the Retainer's Report. It has 14 might, and if the foe has more than 75% HP or an active penalty, then Hubert gets plus for all stats and a free follow-up attack. Pretty basic, but it's like solid base effect. For the refine, if a rally or movement assist is used by Hubert or targets Hubert, inflict minus 7 attack, defense, and res, guard, and exposure on foes in cardinal directions of Hubert and his ally. Then, if Hubert is healthy, he gets another plus for all stats in combat. So overall, the Bert gets +8 to all stats with a free follow-up attack. He then gets a very cool ruse effect that also works with movement skills. Like Fallen Ninian, Hubert has more options to send out ruse debuffs, and his team can activate them too. Hubert also inflicts debuffs to 3 stats with guard, plus inflicts exposure. This exposure ruse is incredibly cool. You can go with the rally ruse setup like normal, or you can use swap, reposition, or whatever you want. Unlike Kronya, Hubert doesn't need to fight at all to inflict exposure. He is a retired 5-star unit though, so if you want merges for him, then that's going to be a lot harder to achieve. In general, Hubert has some decent combat power now. If you can apply Retainer's Report's debuffs with the help of an ally first, then Hubert can benefit from them himself. He essentially gets +15 to everything but speed with the debuffs, and Hubert appreciates the extra hit in bulk. He is not very tanky, so you could try to beef him up with things like sturdy impact, low attack and res, and then attack smoke for the enemy phase. Hubert may not be inflicting speed deals, but he gets +8 from his weapon, which puts him at 40 for his base 5 stars. That's not too bad for busting into tanks, and you can cancel follow-up deny with it. If guard is active, you can get a makeshift flow guard effect into anything slower. If Hubert doubles, then he also double dips off exposure. It ain't brave hits, but that's still 20 extra damage, and he does have a pretty high 39 base attack. For other skills, again, if you want a pierce damage reduction, you need Special Spiral 4, Parrot times Pulse or Heavy Blade. Tackleman's Temple wouldn't be bad either to combine with guard. If you want some player phase power, Tackleman's Menace can help Hubert if he doesn't get his debuffs off. Ideally, you want that exposure damage though. Another option are the tier for Oath skills. Self buffs are great, but the Warp ability also opens up more movement options to rally or just move an ally, and thus you're going to proc Exposure Ruse. You could also run a budget build with a Link B skill. You can proc Link and Ruse with this Refine, and Hubert can go very supportive with things like his default infantry Hexblade or just any sort of drive skills. To be honest, very impressed with this Refine. Hubert did not have a lot going for him before, and he could have been a decent user of the new Arcane Red Tome. He still is if you really want. Retainer's Report, however, has decent self-combat power now thanks to a flexible ruse effect that also has exposure. If Hubert wants to support late Edelgard, exposure works very well with all of her versions, especially the busted Harmonic Summer ult. Our third refine goes out to Na, a red infantry dragon. She is a pretty typical slower defensive dragon, but with a speed super boon and this new refine, you could try speed builds if you really want. Oracle's Breath did get some nice buffs. It still grants +3 attack, and at start of combat, if Na has more than half health or an active bonus, she gets +4 to all stats and prevents a follow-up attack. Easy to use, and it's just extra stats. For the refine, there are 2 parts. At start of turn, if Na is within 2 spaces of an ally, she grants +6 defensive res field buffs to herself and those allies. She also gives a status for extra special cooldown charge per attack. If Na initiates combat or is near an ally, she gets another +4 to all stats and gains bonus stats based on the highest field buff of an ally within 2 spaces, each stat calculated individually. Okay, so for the first part, Na gives a defensive res field buff and a breath type cooldown status. Since feud skills, like from Emblem statuses, can disable Bravely Seen as Refine or Thor's Roadbreaker, this is another way to give cooldown perks to an ally. Feud skills will not get rid of statuses already on the unit, and Na hands this out to anyone around her. She was the original and only holder of Infantry Breath, which did a similar job, but now Oracle's Breath gives cooldown to everyone, another supportive weapon. As for the extra stat part, this is bringing back OG Erica's Refine. Na borrows the highest field buff from an ally. It's like an ally bonus doubler type effect. All in all, Na is now much tankier than before. She gets +8 to all stats in combat. Her +6 defensive field buff is shared with allies, and Na then takes that buff back for herself. Altogether, she gets a super easy +20 defensive res just for staying with her team. You got follow-up denial and breath type special cooldown, so a distant counter build is really simple to put together. If you do not focus on speed but you want some player phase power, then Dragon's Ire 4 is the answer. Follow-ups for both phases with Na's innate follow-up denial equates to Omnibreaker, gives her more flexibility, and you have mixed phase stat boosters like Ideal or Finish for A skills. If you instead prefer the pure enemy phase DC build, then Quicker Pose 4 might be better. You're going to get some damage reduction with a follow-up attack, and you're free to run defensive A skills like Sturdy Stance 3 or Attack and Defense Unity. Taggama's Finish 4 isn't bad either since Na does get that extra cooldown. For more pure tanking, Dragon Wall is definitely on the table, and with all the res stacking Na can do. Dragon's Wrath 4 can also be used for Glimmer counterattacks, and you get bonus damage reduction on the side. In terms of buffing, Na could get her own attack and speed buffs with something like attack and speed menace. Perhaps it's an option for a speed build. However, to make the most of the refine, you also want nearby allies with full buffs to borrow from. Na gives defense and res, so ideally you want an ally with attack and speed buffs. You also want them to be able to buff Na and another ally, or just themselves, since Na is borrowing those field buffs from them. If you have a fully consistent buffing team, Na can get plus 20 to all stats, and at that point you could run bonus doubler to double dip. Just watch out for panic or low skills. Now, since infantry breath is basically useless on the only unit who had it, if you still want a buffing skill, Na could swap over to something like infantry no follow-up. Fast allies would love something like no follow-up as a status, with the breath type cooldown also as a status. Like with Hubert, Na has combat and support abilities. She could also run a budget link B skill or a rally route setup, but generally I do think she wants one of the upgraded dragon B skills to fight herself. Funny enough, since she has breath type cooldown, Special Spiral 4 is relevant once again. However, I think Na lacks the offensive effects to really make it shine. She is more of a defensive unit, but feel free to support another unit using Special Spiral with her cooldown status. Fourth refine for today is for duo Ephraim and Lyon, who are an infantry lance unit. In game, this refine is so stupidly long thanks to all the term definitions, but it's really not that complicated. Reginleif did get some base upgrades. It's still effective against armor and cavalry units, plus grants 3 attack. However, it now also lets Ephraim ignore forest tile movement penalties. Okay, we'll take it. There is then an at start of combat attack check that grants plus for all stats if Ephraim wins. You then have an in combat attack check, and that grants a free follow-up attack. To make things simpler, if you have an active bonus, you don't need to do any attack checking. Ephraim gets his stats and the follow-up. Now for the refine, if a bonus is active, Ephraim gets near trace, contra remaining +1. Every even turn, he gets +1 movement, aka even tempest. Then, if Ephraim has 125% HP, he gets plus for all stats, and if bonus is active, for the last time, prevent a follow-up attack. There are literally 4 conditions where an active bonus fulfills all of them, and that's exactly what you want to do. Luckily, every even turn, Ephraim gets the +1 movement buff, which means Reginleif is fully active. For odd turns, you can then use their dual skill. Infantry and armor allies within 2 spaces, including Ephraim, get +1 movement. Essentially, duo Ephraim wants to abuse movement buffs to count as his active bonus, and then you're going to get Omnibreaker, Nurture's Kanto, and +8 to all stats. On the side, Ephraim also has the armor and cav effectiveness, even tempest, and the ability to ignore forest tile movement penalties. That one is so random, but it will make duo Ephraim a very mobile unit. Depending on the map, that could also come in handy. In terms of playstyle, nothing really stands out as a must-use skill. Duo Ephraim is going to be pretty scrappy with Omnibreaker for offense and defense, plus he can get free damage against armor and cavs. The high mobility is very solid, including Kanto, but you only get the +1 movement on even turns. Well, you can solve that by using Odd Tempest, and I'm sorry if you already inherited Even Tempest before. With Odd Tempest, every turn, Reginleif is ready to go, and this does have its perks. For example, when you can't use the dual skill, Ephraim isn't going to be slowed down. However, if you instead use a different C skill, then it might let you do things like run Times Pulse for 4 cooldown Gale Force. You can depend on the dual skill for 2 continuous turns of 3 movement, but it does depend on the game mode. In terms of base kit, Heavy Blade 4 plus low attack and defense do synergize together. It was meant to go with Reginleif's attack comparisons, but you don't really have to do that anymore. Still, you can get the bonus cooldown, extra damage, and then use a Sacred Seal for a proper stat boost. For other skills, Ephraim will be getting into fights often, so you want some sustain options. You could go for a slow, sturdy surge plus tempo build, and just depend on Reginleif's follow-up attack. That gives max % HP sustain, but it's player phase dependent. The other option could be Bulwark or Finish 4 A skills. As an aside, since Ephraim can get 3 movement, Clash 4 A skills aren't a bad option. If you can move at least 2 spaces, you neutralize debuffs, which is a solid bonus. Maybe you could pair it with Seal Defense 4 for big defense debuffs, and Attack and Defense Menace could also allow Ephraim to proc the guard effect from that skill. If you need specials, you could slot Heavy Blade as a Sacred Seal, and again, Times Pulse, very nice. The Breath Seals also work, but duo Ephraim is more of an active on the Prowl type unit. Speaking of which, if you want to go for a speed build, Ephraim isn't the fastest, but Reginleif adds +8 speed now. Higher speed does make Omnibreaker more effective since you're going to mess with any slower unit, and that goes for offense and defense. For example, if you did want to stack speed with things like Attack and Speed Solo, Surge Sparrow, or Attack and Speed Menace, then Dodge B skills could provide some valuable damage reduction. Velocity could replace Tempo if you just want no guard. Another interesting option is Close Call. This is the hit and run dodge B skill which could synergize with Ephraim's near trace Kanto. With the 1 space movement from Close Call after an attack, you could still move 1 space more even if you initiated from 3 spaces out. That would simulate like having Kanto 2, at least if you're going backwards. Pretty neat interaction, and for the most part, that type of gameplay is what makes this refine unique. Duo Ephraim becomes a much more mobile unit while retaining his high damage output, and even gets some defensive help via stats and fault denial. He's not going to be a bunker buster like his brave twin, but he'll have a lot more skill options thanks to big infantry. Maybe in the future there'll be a skill that fits more in line with this mobile infantry refine. Last up, we have Winter Duo Marth and Elice. They're a colorless armored archer, but unlike some of the other armored archers, Duo Marth is built more like an offensive infantry unit. He is one of the fastest archers period, and speed is very important for this refine. Tanngrisnir is a 14-my bow that grants another +3 to Marth. At start of combat, if Marth has more than half health or an active bonus, he gets +4 to all stats and special cooldown charge +1 per attack during combat. Like Duo Ephraim, Marth's weapon has been made easier to use, and the stat boost got bumped up to +4. Previously, this bow had blade type cooldown reduction, but it now has breath type cooldown. It honestly doesn't really matter that much, but it's still good to have. Further refine, if Marth is within 3 spaces of an ally, he gets +4 to all stats again, and if a ranged foe initiates combat and Marth has higher speed, he gets to counterattack first and can make a follow-up attack before the foe can counter again. In other words, Duo Marth gets speed preempt, which means ranged advantage, and even if an enemy phase desperation effect. That means he can hit first with advantage, then he can hit attack again with his follow-up attack. This is super nasty, and once again we have another vantage-centric unit. Duo Marth is not that different from Ninja Camilla. He compares speed instead of resistance, and even though Marth doesn't get brave attacks, he can simulate it with the advantage plus desperation effect. Camilla may accelerate specials, but Marth gets cooldown reduction on his first shot, which is enough to charge up his 2 cooldown Fire Emblem special. Fire Emblem also scales off of speed. If this wasn't enough firepower, you then got their dual skill. Marth gives himself an armored plus flying allies within 3 rows, a +3 field buff to all stats, and bonus doubler to double that. Reminder that once Fire Emblem procs, it also distributes a +4 field buff to all stats for all allies. Generally speaking, instead of trying to tank things out like most save skill units, Marth is going for the advantage KO cheese. The devs are really trying to bring back that advantage meta. Before you go too crazy, there are some limitations to this refine. First off, the advantage effect only works against ranged foes, so you have to use fire save if you're going savior. Second, Marth may have advantage plus enemy phase desperation, but he can be stopped by any follow-up denial effect, like on our new free Book 7 hero. You need to either get a free follow-up effect with a quick repulse skill like Slick Fighter, or you're going to need offensive follow-up from Savvy Fighter. Third, Marth needs to win this speed check at all costs. He is not built to actually tank multiple hits, and you need as many speed boosters to keep up with all these squishy offensive threats out there. 10 speed ideal for wouldn't be bad because ideally Marth doesn't get hit anyway, so you can just keep the full effect going. If attack and speed far save does come out, you're going to want that variant, and you want to run attack and speed form or bond in the seal slot. If you have all of these things, then the game plan is very straightforward. Outspeed the ranged attacker, hit them with 2 hits in a row, and Fire Emblem will proc on that second hit. Marth does not have actual brave attacks, so once those 2 hits lands, that's going to be it. He cannot quad on the enemy phase. Hopefully that lets him to kill at that point. Now, there are some adjustments you can make to this. First off, the slightly safer build is Kestrel Stance 3 with Savvy Fighter. Slick or Wily Fighter can deal with debuffs or field buffs, but Savvy Fighter brings 30% damage reduction. Marth doesn't want to get hit, but Vantage is counterable by things like Hardy Bearing or just even Fire Sweep. If that happens, Savvy Fighter can maybe keep him alive just enough to return fire, and Kestrel Stance's guard effect might prevent a special. If you can get a follow-up attack or offensive no follow-up somehow, you could go for more firepower with skills like Special Spiral 4 or Seal Defense 4. Like Camilla, Seal Defense 4 just gives Marth more damage. As we discussed many times in this video, Special Spiral 4 can let Fire Emblem Pierce damage reduction. That may be worth it to you since Marth cannot charge Deadeye in time. Remember to only chase for more damage skills if you can already deal with follow prevention somehow. Marth needs that follow-up attack to come through. Personally, before you do anything, I would wait to see the new winter banner. Marth might get some better skills to use since it's probably another armored themed banner. Overall though, very neat refine. Instead of trying to match Hardy Fighter DC Far Saviors, the Hero King is going back to sneaky Vantage plays. That'll be it for this batch of refines. I'm quite surprised we got not 1, but 2 units who can apply exposure. We also got 2 Venge themed playstyles, and there were some neat surprises. Hubert's exposure ruse effect is pretty cool, and Ephraim basically turned into a hyper mobile unit who can even ignore trees. Personally, I do think Duo Marth is pretty scary now, but he's also going to be a seasonal unit. Let me know your thoughts on our first Book 7 refines, and I'll be back soon to talk about the upcoming Book 7 banner. Going to continue hyping up Special Spiral 4. That's all I got for now. Thank you for watching. Reminder to get those 7,000 arena medals from the upcoming quests, and I will see you in the next video.